He doesn't seek attention. He doesn't play by their rules. And yet they come for him relentlessly. Why? Because in a world that idolizes conformity, the Sigma male is the anomaly that can't be explained, predicted, or contained. His silence, it disrupts the noise. His solitude, it echoes louder than 1,000 voices. The Sigma doesn't reject society out of rebellion. He simply doesn't need it to define who he is. In biological terms, humans are wired for group behavior. From hunter-gatherer tribes to modern office cubicles, social cohesion has always been a survival tool. But evolution also birthed outliers, those who walked alone, observed more than they spoke, and thought deeper than they reacted. These are the Sigmas. They don't compete for alpha dominance or beta acceptance. They exit the hierarchy altogether, and that exit isn't passive. It's powerful, because it reveals a truth many refuse to face. Much of what we call success is actually social theater. Sigma males tear down that stage by refusing to act. In psychological studies, individuals who exhibit high self-determination, those who live by internal values rather than external rewards, tend to unsettle hierarchical structures. Why? Because they're proof that fulfillment doesn't require applause. In corporate settings, the Sigma's refusal to play politics makes him appear threatening to those whose careers thrive on manipulation. In social settings, his calm demeanor is misread as arrogance by people addicted to validation. His stillness forces others to confront their own noise. And so, he is labeled, misunderstood, targeted, but not with open attacks, with subtler weapons, whispers, isolation, reputational sabotage. The world doesn't know what to do with a man who doesn't need it, so it tries to break him. But here's the catch, it can't. Because the Sigma doesn't draw strength from approval, he draws it from purpose. And when your compass is internal, no storm can reroute you. That's the essence of the Sigma male, quiet, unshaken, and untraceable. Not because he's hiding, but because he's free. And in a controlled world, nothing is more dangerous than a free man. Point 1. He can't be guilt-tripped. People often use guilt as a subtle form of manipulation to control others, especially those who have begun to break away from social norms or redefine their priorities. Phrases like, "Why don't you come out anymore?" or "You've changed" may seem harmless, even caring on the surface. But they're frequently rooted in an unspoken expectation. These questions are emotional hooks meant to reel someone back into old patterns of behavior. But guilt only has power over those who are still seeking validation, approval, or belonging. That's where the Sigma male stands apart. He isn't motivated by the need to be liked or accepted. His operating system runs on autonomy and internal truth. While most people crave connection to the point of self-abandonment, the Sigma male chooses integrity over inclusion. He values authenticity over appeasement and boundaries over blind bonding. When he withdraws, it's not out of malice, it's an act of preservation. He knows that time and energy are finite resources, and he's intentional with both. He doesn't owe anyone an explanation for his absence because his identity is not tied to anyone's expectations. And that unsettles people. Psychologically, this dynamic is tied to what social scientists call our tendency to interpret interactions based on relationship dynamics. When a Sigma male shifts or distances himself, others feel a loss of control in that dynamic, and they often react by trying to reassert emotional influence through guilt. But their efforts rarely succeed because the Sigma is already free from the psychological need to be managed by groupthink. That freedom is what gets him labeled as cold or heartless. It's not that he lacks emotion, it's that he doesn't let emotion dictate his decisions. In fact, this kind of emotional sovereignty is something many secretly envy. They may call him distant, but what they really feel is discomfort in the presence of someone who has mastered self-alignment, someone who cannot be guilt-tripped, manipulated, or emotionally coerced. And while society praises conformity masked as connection, the Sigma lives by a different code, one that protects his peace over popularity. He knows who he is. And ironically, it's that unwavering clarity that often draws people in, even as they pretend to push him away. Point 2. He sees through social masks. People often use guilt as a subtle weapon to control others, especially those who have started setting boundaries and walking a different path. You'll hear it in phrases like, "Why don't you come out anymore?" or "You've changed." On the surface, these words may seem like expressions of concern, but they often carry a manipulative undertone. a psychological push to make you feel responsible for someone else's discomfort. This tactic works best on those who are approval seekers, who crave validation, and who are deeply affected by the fear of disappointing others. But the Sigma male isn't built that way. He doesn't measure his worth by how many people he pleases. He's not interested in playing emotional chess with those who can't handle his detachment. He values truth over comfort, clarity over closeness, and purpose over people-pleasing. If he's absent, it's not an oversight, it's intentional. He doesn't explain himself because he doesn't owe anyone a justification for protecting his energy. That silence is his boundary. It's a declaration that he's not available for games or guilt trips. And because society is so conditioned to demand constant availability and emotional conformity, people find his self-containment threatening. They label him cold, arrogant, or heartless. But what they're really feeling is envy. Envy for the freedom he lives with, for the clarity he operates from. According to psychological studies, individuals who set firm boundaries tend to have higher self-esteem and better mental health. The Sigma doesn't isolate out of bitterness. He withdraws to preserve focus, peace, and authenticity. While others are entangled in emotional obligations, he moves through life with purpose and autonomy. This doesn't mean he lacks empathy or connection. It means he refuses to be emotionally manipulated into becoming someone he's not. In a world that thrives on distraction and demands emotional availability, the Sigma's discipline appears radical. But it's not cruelty, it's clarity. His distance isn't rejection, it's redirection. He's not avoiding people, he's choosing himself. And ironically, the more he does this, the more others are drawn to him. Not because he's chasing attention, but because he embodies what so many lack: freedom from guilt, freedom from approval, and the power to live by one's own design. Point 3. He disrupts group hierarchies. Every group, whether it's a corporate team, a school clique, a military unit, or a group of friends at a bar, naturally develops a hierarchy, a leader, followers, and the complex social glue that keeps the pecking order intact. People jostle for position through charm, dominance, loyalty, or influence, but then someone different shows up, the Sigma male. He doesn't play the game, not because he can't, but because he genuinely isn't interested. He doesn't want the crown, the applause, or the authority. That's precisely what makes him so disruptive. Unlike the alpha who commands the spotlight, or the beta who supports the alpha to gain approval, the Sigma exists outside this system. His power lies in his independence, and ironically, that makes others feel unsettled. You see, the human brain is wired to respond to social hierarchies. Studies in evolutionary psychology show that our ancestors survived better in structured tribes, so our modern minds still seek roles and status for a sense of security. When someone like the Sigma doesn't engage in this deeply embedded social contract, it exposes a truth that many aren't ready to face, that much of their confidence is rooted in how others see them. The Sigma doesn't need applause to validate his worth, and in doing so, he inadvertently becomes a mirror. That mirror reflects others' dependency on approval, hierarchy, and status, not by criticizing them, but simply by existing. And that's what creates tension. He doesn't outshine others by being louder or more dominant. He outshines them by being free from the need to impress, to lead, to be liked. That kind of neutrality is threatening in a world addicted to recognition. It's not aggression, it's detachment. And that detachment radiates an authenticity so rare that it challenges the very foundation of most social groups. The Sigma walks into the room and without lifting a finger, without playing anyone's game, he unsettles the entire order. Not because he wants to win, but because he doesn't care if there's a game at all. Point 4. Women can't box him in. He's not the nice guy who panders, constantly seeking approval or sacrificing his identity to make others comfortable. He's not the dominant alpha who needs to be in control of every room, posturing to prove power. Instead, he walks a quieter, more powerful path, the Sigma male. The man who doesn't beg for attention and doesn't demand submission. He's the mystery she can't decode, the paradox who's fully present yet emotionally elusive. What makes him so compelling isn't loud behavior or visible dominance. It's his aura of controlled independence. He's stable in his values, but free in his spirit. Unpredictable, not because he's erratic, but because he can't be manipulated or mapped like everyone else. That unpredictability creates tension, an emotional gravity few can resist. Psychology backs this up. Research in interpersonal attraction shows that uncertainty often increases fascination. When something or someone isn't easily defined, the human brain becomes obsessed with solving the puzzle. The Sigma male embodies this. He's not aloof to appear cool. He's selective because his time, energy, and peace are sacred. Some love that about him, drawn to his quiet confidence and self-mastery. Others feel unsettled, even threatened by the fact that he doesn't need validation or approval. But whether they admire him or misunderstand him, no one forgets him. Because while most men orbit around attention, reacting to what the world expects, the Sigma orbits around purpose. Purpose gives him direction, not applause. He's internally motivated, building his life around goals, visions, and values, not people's opinions. That's what makes him rare in a society addicted to image. He knows who he is and doesn't ask for permission to be that man. He's the one she remembers years later, not because he played games or said the perfect words, but because he was unlike anyone else. When he enters a room, it's not noise that announces him, it's presence, a grounded, unshakable sense of self. In a world full of followers and controllers, he's something different, something real, something unforgettable. And that's why he never chases attention, because he knows attention always finds him. Point 5, he refuses to argue emotionally. People bait him, test him, try to spark a reaction, but he won't play their game. The Sigma male moves through social conflict like a chess grandmaster, measured, calm, and always 3 steps ahead. When others raise their voices, hoping to provoke him, his response is surgical. No raised voice, no emotional escalation, no ego-driven comeback. Just pure logic or deliberate silence. And that silence, it's not weakness, it's power. Research in psychology confirms that silence during conflict often shifts control to the quiet party, forcing the aggressor into a state of confusion or self-reflection. Emotionally reactive people can't stand this. They thrive on drama and feed off the chaos of emotional entanglements. When they don't get the reaction they crave, when their outburst meets a wall of calm, they unravel. Why? Because they expect others to respond the way would. But the Sigma doesn't bend to social expectations. He's not wired to seek validation through conflict or dominance. Instead, he finds strength in mental clarity and inner discipline. His presence is disarming not because he's loud, but because he's unreadable. Neurologically speaking, people are hardwired to seek emotional feedback in social situations. When that feedback is absent, when the Sigma stares back with stillness, it triggers discomfort in those who lack emotional control. They interpret his neutrality as superiority or judgment, and it exposes their own insecurity. Meanwhile, the Sigma male isn't trying to win the interaction. He's simply conserving energy, choosing not to invest in petty battles. It's stoicism in action, a trait deeply rooted in ancient philosophy, where the wise were taught to master their emotions rather than be mastered by them. This kind of discipline isn't common in a world where everyone wants to be heard first, react fastest, and talk loudest. The Sigma flips the script. He listens more than he speaks. He thinks before he moves. And when he does speak, his words cut through noise like a scalpel, precise, purposeful, and impossible to ignore. This is what makes him dangerous to the emotionally chaotic. Not his anger, but his unshakable calm. He's not trying to outshine anyone. He's just not dimming his light to match theirs. Point 6. He's immune to trends. The Sigma doesn't flinch, not because he's arrogant or indifferent, but because his mindset is forged in solitude and self-mastery. In a world obsessed with trends, outrage, and constant validation, the Sigma male stands as a countercurrent. New challenge, new movement, viral opinion. While most rush to react, riposte, or rant, the Sigma remains still, not out of fear, but because his worth isn't measured by his participation in noise. He's not against the world. He's just unaffected by its theatrics. This psychological detachment comes from a place of deep introspection and autonomy. Studies in personality psychology link such traits to high levels of introverted intuition and emotional regulation, skills often honed through intentional solitude and internal focus. The Sigma's silence isn't passive, it's deliberate. He doesn't speak to be seen, he speaks when it matters. Unlike those driven by performative validation, the Sigma only contributes when his words carry weight. And because of that rarity, people listen when he does. His influence doesn't come from volume, but from value. In fact, research shows that those who speak less but with precision are perceived as more competent and intelligent, a phenomenon called the reservoir effect. When everyone else is shouting, trying to go viral, his silence becomes a paradox. It feels like thunder. It commands attention not through aggression, but by contrast. This paradox mirrors ancient Stoic philosophy, which values mastery over one's emotions and reactions. Like Marcus Aurelius, who ruled without seeking applause, the Sigma moves through life with an internal compass, not a need for approval. Entertainment may change, trends may fade, but the Sigma remains anchored. And in today's chaotic digital battlefield of opinions and outrage, that calm, focused energy is rare and powerful. His silence can provoke more thought than 1,000 viral rants. Because while the world shouts to be noticed, the Sigma simply acts, and in doing so he leaves a mark that's not just louder, but lasting. Point 7, he walks away fully. When he's done, he's done. No guilt, no games, no closure tours. That's the way of the Sigma male, and it unnerves people more than they care to admit. In a society where ghosting is normalized, but closure is still expected, the Sigma male breaks the mold with unapologetic finality. Most people leave cracks in the door, hoping for reconciliation, attention, or some emotional leverage. But the Sigma male, he closes the door, locks it, and tosses away the key without announcing the departure, not out of cruelty, but because he values peace over prolonged drama. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies on emotional regulation have shown that people who are more introspective and less socially dependent, traits often found in Sigma personalities, tend to recover faster from emotional turmoil when they cut ties decisively. The Sigma's detachment isn't emotional coldness, it's emotional efficiency. He doesn't burn bridges out of anger, he deletes the map because he has no intention of walking that route again. This rattles people because it denies them something they're used to. Emotional negotiation. They can't plead, manipulate, or linger in a loop of confusion. The Sigma leaves, and that silence becomes louder than any argument. This level of self-respect and boundary setting often gets misunderstood as arrogance or heartlessness. In reality, it's rooted in clarity. When something or someone no longer aligns with his values, vision, or energy, he exits, not to punish, but to protect. It's not about winning. It's about preserving his path. Society is conditioned to expect loops of dysfunction, breadcrumbing, and emotional gray zones. But the Sigma rewrites the script. His detachment is not an act of revenge, it's an act of evolution. And that's what shakes people to their core. Because deep down, many wish they had the strength to do the same, to walk away without making a scene, to disappear without guilt, to say nothing and still mean everything. Point 8, he creates, not competes. He doesn't measure success by beating others. He measures it by outgrowing himself. In a world obsessed with competition, comparison, and public validation, the Sigma male walks a different path. While others gauge their worth by outperforming peers, flashing their lifestyles on social media, or climbing the ladder faster than the next man, the Sigma male is locked into a more personal, internal mission, becoming better than who he was yesterday. This mindset is rooted in something deeper than ego, it's self-mastery. Psychologists describe this as intrinsic motivation, the drive that comes from within rather than from external rewards. Sigma males embody this. They don't care about applause, timelines, or trending metrics of success. While others broadcast their every move, chasing likes and recognition, the Sigma builds in silence. He's not interested in announcing every step of his progress, because he knows true strength doesn't need to speak. It simply becomes undeniable over time. When he arrives, when his plans finally bloom into visible success, it catches people off guard. Because he wasn't performing for an audience, he was preparing for a purpose. This element of quiet growth often baffles those used to loud ambition. Think of bamboo, which spends years growing underground before it suddenly shoots up feet within weeks. That's the Sigma's way, laying foundations others can't see until it's too late to catch up. Studies on high-performance individuals reveal that delayed gratification and low need for social approval are two critical traits of people who build enduring legacies. And that's exactly what the Sigma male is after. Not a flashy sprint, but a lifelong marathon rooted in discipline, clarity, and inner peace. His success isn't an explosion, it's an unveiling. And by the time the world notices, he's already miles ahead, not because he rushed, but because he refused to compete with noise and chose instead to align with his own growth. That's not just smart, it's rare. It's powerful, and it's very Sigma. They tried to shame him, provoke him, and isolate him, thinking they'd break him. But while the noise surrounded others, he found power in the silence. In the quiet, he built discipline. In the shadows, he sharpened his mind, and while the crowd scrambled for validation, he chased something rarer: truth. The Sigma male is not a product of popularity. He's forged through solitude. Unlike alpha types who thrive on leadership and control, or betas who seek group belonging, Sigmas stand apart. Psychological studies suggest that men with high introversion and self-direction often exhibit Sigma traits, thriving independently, resisting peer pressure, and focusing on internal growth. His strength isn't about overpowering others, but about staying aligned with his purpose. He doesn't seek fame, but his presence changes the room. His legacy isn't loud, but it lasts. In a world desperate for conformity, the Sigma chooses mastery over mimicry. Stay curious, stay Sigma.